Famous Five celebration saluted three influential Arctic trailblazers this week. They are Nunavut Premier Eva Aariak, former Ambassador Mary Simon, and Inuit activist Sheila Watt-Cloutier. I think if leadership in the Arctic could be distilled to three people, these would be it. Three women from the Arctic that were saluted today in the Famous Five. Let me talk about that. I don't know, Premier, if I'm imagining it, but it seems to me women in the Arctic hold far more leadership roles than they do down here. Am I misreading that, or do you think that's a reality?
You're quite correct. It is a reality today, and it's what's happening today. Many women in their own communities hold the jobs as well, and it seems to be a trend for now. But right now we have our commissioner, who is, in terms of Nunavut, who is equivalent to lieutenant governor. She's a woman. Our MP is a woman, and so on. And many of our leaders are women. But that's not to say that we value the men leadership as well. I think a bit of a balance is the way to go.
Sheila, how do you see it? Is that reality that women, not only in the homes but also in the political and other leadership capacities, are taking the leadership role?
I think more Inuit women have taken the leadership role, perhaps even in the national and international venues, right, more so than many of our men. And I think, an example is Mary Simon, of course, who led the way for many of us in, 20, 30 years ago. There's a lot more women that should be running, in my opinion. But I think women fare fairly well in that transition, as we come from a very cultural way of life to now a very institutional and governance-based leadership. And women tend to fare quite well in those leadership roles. In other words, we adapt quite well to the leadership roles. And again, it's not to say that men don't, but it comes a little bit more natural, I think, for some of us.
Yeah, Mary, you were a bit of a trailblazer up there, and it's been a while. Are you seeing sufficient? We get all excited down here because there's 5 provincial premiers that are women, and we think, wow. But there were more women premiers in the north long before that happened. What is the difference? What explains that?
Well, there's been a big shift. When I started some 40 years ago, there weren't too many women in political life. Women tended to take on jobs that were related to the development of the community. For instance, a lot of the teachers are women, a lot of the social workers are women, and a lot of the, if you go into nursing, a lot of them are women. So they tend to go into those roles at the community level, and then they move on to political leadership. And I think there's been that transition taking place, whereas men, I think, because culturally they were the head of the household, they tend to go for the political leadership level right away, and we sort of grow into our jobs, and whereas men tend to run for politics fairly early on, and then they don't go for the teacher training and the nurses training programs, that kind of thing. So I think there's quite a difference there. So there's been a big transition taking place over the last 30 years, and it shows, in the makeup of representation right now.
I know this is a celebration of women in leadership roles, but I can't let you go without knowing you three are also very close to what's going on in the Arctic anyway. And one of the things that's down here that we kind of overlook is climate change and the impact it's having up there, far more dramatic than down here. Premier, are you satisfied that this government, I don't want to get too political, but I will anyway, that this government's sort of doing enough? Do you think the sensitivity to what's going on in climate change is being reflected on things that are going on up there?
There certainly is a big issue with climate change. It is affecting our infrastructure foundations. It's affecting our thinning of the ice, including our well-known hunters who are actually literally falling through the ice because the conditions that they normally use are no longer the same. So the climate change is upon us in a big way, and we need to address that. We are the people in the Arctic that feel the climate change first. We are the sink, so to speak. So it's very important that we have a adaptation program or policy in that area, because we're not the ones that are polluting the world, but we are feeling it. and it's very important to be addressed.
One thing that's coming up, and I wouldn't mind both of you commenting on this as well, is Canada's taking over the chair of the Arctic Council. And I wonder if these topics are going to come to the forefront. I know Leona Glukak is going to be the chair of that. I don't know if that causes you any concern from a partisan point of view. But what can be done, what should be done while Canada has control of that chairmanship of all these Arctic nations to make things better? I'll start with you on this one, Sheila.
Well, Canada has always been at the forefront. And again, we bring Mary Simon into this because she was one of the brains behind the creation of the Arctic Council with Lloyd Axworthy,
Right.
Former Foreign Affairs Minister. Has always been at the forefront of this work at the Arctic Council level, and in fact was the first chair of the Arctic Council. The tremendous work that the Arctic Council does is extremely important, but it's a consensus-based council where the strength lies in the working committees and the actual work that gets done with the assessments, such as climate change, human development, and all of that in the Arctic. So if Canada is taking on the chair, it needs to continue to be very strong in its leadership on addressing the issues of the day.
Is it going to be strong? You're hopeful, I guess, are you, Mary Simon?
Well, I remember the days when it was new, and you know, we had to really establish the council as a legitimate council. And after 14 years, it is coming around back to Canada, so it's a real opportunity for Canada to take a strong leadership role. I don't like to get involved in partisan politics, but I'm hoping that that whoever is chairing, which is Minister Glukak, will take that leadership and develop the council in a way that addresses the issues that are affecting us, such as what Premier Aariak was talking about. And also the conditions in the community. Like, the council was created not just to deal with environmental issues, but about development as well. And we have been saying over and over again over the past few years that we have these comprehensive land claims agreement, we have a new territory, we need to be partners in the work that is happening up north, and that needs to be recognized much more fully.
Well, I commend you for coming in, and congratulations on being recognized by the Famous Five group here in Ottawa. And what can I say? They made great picks. Thanks again for coming in.
Thank you very much for your